All right, good evening, Garage Sports listeners. Thursday, December 5th, we're coming to you live from the Craft Emporium, 120 West Chillicothe in the heart of Bellefontaine, Ohio. Tonight's our first episode of In the Garage, brought to you by Top of Ohio Radon. Top of Ohio Radon is owned and operated by a great friend, Paul Newland. Radon's a silent killer, can be found in many homes across west central Ohio. I had Paul out to my house a few years ago to test my levels. Paul was professional and dependable. Fortunately, my levels were good, but it's important to find out as even next-door neighbors can have different levels of dangerous radon. Call Paul at 937-935-2806 and give yourself the peace of mind of a safe home. All right, we got a good show for everyone tonight. Here shortly, we'll be joined by Logan County media legend Bill Tipple and West Liberty Salem former coach, former PA announcer, and all-around super fan Matt Hall. We're going to dig into a recap of West Liberty Salem football's historic run to a Division V Region 20 championship and a trip to the OHSAA state semifinals versus Ironton last Friday night. We'll talk this weekend's state finals, which are already underway. I believe Avon is out to an early lead in the Division II finals up in Canton. And then we'll finish with the postmortem on last Saturday's debacle in the Horseshoe. So speaking of debacles in the Horseshoe, Brian Harmon joins us from the Craft Emporium. And not that you are a debacle in the Horseshoe, but you've seen a few.
I have.
And that was, so Brian is the owner, proprietor, founder of Craft Emporium, where we're located tonight, 120 West Chillicothe. We'll get into some of your plans for the place, but real quick to follow up on that Ohio State, longtime Ohio State fan, recent sufferer. Where does last Saturday rank?
It's the second worst loss in the 113-year history of the program.
Number one?
1969.
Okay. Super Sauce?
Yeah, that was a significant loss. 22 straight wins. They're on their way to repeating. They lose that game up there 24-12, and it changes the arc of the rivalry. It changes the arc of the Big Ten. It was significant.
Was there point spreads back then?
Sure they were. Michigan was ranked 12th at the time. But still, Ohio State, 22 straight games winners. They were big favorites. No one really thought this was going to happen. It was Bo's first year. And it significantly had an impact on the future of the programs over the last 50 years. This loss Saturday, though, you have to go back to 1993 of an unranked Michigan team beating a ranked Ohio State team. That's 33 years.
Bobby Hoying led Buckeyes?
Yep. They got blanked. They were undefeated, one tie going into that game in Michigan, and they got beat 20-0. That was 93. The last time, though, that an unranked Michigan team beat a ranked Ohio State team in Columbus, you have to go back 74 years. 1950 in the Snow Bowl is how far you have to go back. Was this game significant? Look, anybody as old as me has seen them lose their opportunities. We could probably name a lot of years where we were one game away. This one was different. You're 21-point favorites. This is one of the weakest Michigan teams of the last at least couple decades. And there was a very slim path for a Michigan victory in that football game, and Ryan Day handed it to him on a platter.
You have some strong opinions about that. We are going to get into that later with Bill Tipple and Matt Hall. I've got some strong opinions. I probably fall on a little bit both sides of the fence when it comes to the issue. I definitely agree with a lot of your points, but I do have some pushback, I guess, to the national media. Some of that narrative has kind of worn on me in the last few days. Mm-hmm. We are still playing. We, as in Ohio State, are playing for a national title. Yeah. Whether that's likely or not is a whole different thing. But I do have some strong opinions that all is not lost, and Jim Harbaugh lost 5 games in a row to Ohio State. So I've seen a real uneven expectation of two programs. So if we're going to expect different things, out of the programs, let's be honest about it. Mm-hmm. That Ohio State's obviously just a much better program than Michigan because Michigan is allowed to lose 5 straight games to Ohio State, and everything's apparently okay. Mm-hmm. But if Ohio State loses 4 straight, then Brian Day should be fired and the sky is falling. So we'll talk about that. More importantly, a lot of things are changing here at the Craft Emporium. I'm just going to let you run with what's happening here.
Well, in June, I reached an agreement with the Johnson family of the Pink House to buy their on-premise permit with an idea of expanding. As it turned out, my neighbor Tanisha at Candy Craze needed a much bigger space, and she vacated the space adjacent to me, which allowed a natural opportunity to expand next door to 122. And so over the last few months, I've been renovating this space to from candy store to pub, and we're almost ready. We've gone through final inspections on the space, and we're really just waiting for paperwork from the state of Ohio. And we'll soon have a little neighborhood pub downtown, and it'll allow people to shop in the bottle shop and then come over here and enjoy that beer on site in a small little pub setting. So I think it's a good synergy between the two parts of the business, and it was a natural expansion opportunity. I'm pretty excited about that.
All right, yeah, I think there's a lot of people excited. Some people are already chomping at the bit to get going. Of course, got to get legal first, but we're excited to be here. We'll be here every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. We've got a bunch of different guests coming on, which, speaking of that, we've got, we're going to just segue into Matt Hall and Bill Tipple. Matt, I referred to you as a former coach, which we talked about that. You coached in the Pee-wees, and you coached 1 year of high school there a few years ago. You said the COVID year. You were the PA announcer. You don't do that anymore.
No, I still am.
Okay, you are the PA announcer.
You referred to me as a super fan, Rick.
Well, you are kind of. Well, a super fan. I don't mean that like Big Nut, the Ohio State guy that they keep showing on freaking television. But I mean, you are. Would you say you have become the preeminent West Liberty Salem?
Yeah.
You're the guy that if you want to ask somebody, like I've kind of they say that Tipple says I'm a local historian now with this garage sports stuff. You're the guy with West Liberty, right? I mean,
I self-proclaimed, yes.
And you moved to West Liberty in the mid-90s, 93, 94?
1994, yeah.
So you come from Illinois.
From Illinois, yeah.
And still an Illini fan.
All the way. Yeah.
Ohio State hater?
No.
Not an Ohio State hater.
No, I'll cheer for the Buckeyes when they're not playing.
Michigan hater?
I don't hate anybody.
Right. Well, yeah.
Packers.
Okay, that must be not
Packers. Mechanics were Packers.
Yeah.
West Jefferson.
Yeah.
Gosh, I am a super fan.
Yeah, there you go. Sounds like a super fan. So, West Liberty Salem, they come into the season, high expectations. When you say, as I was covering this stuff this summer, I did the media guide and talked to Dan McGill, head coach, longtime head coach now, I think 12 or 13 years, and took over in 2013. I felt like talking to him, talking to Andy McGill, a longtime assistant, brother to Dan, I felt like just listening to them talk and kind of reading up, and you know, of course, I've followed it for the last few years. It felt like, and tell me if I'm wrong, that this team for West Liberty was very diverse, like had good players at a lot of different places.
I agree with that, yeah. And I think that's kind of what made this team special and why the expectations were high. I mean, listen, when you lose a player like Gabe McGill, you lose your starting quarterback, you lose some key players, most years, you're not going to have super high expectations because that's a lot of production that was gone. But I think, Coach McGill's, I'll call him, and a lot of people knew there was just so much versatility with this football team. So many playmakers, so many kids that you could put the football in the hand of, and they could make plays happen. And that happened pretty much all year. And to me, they exceeded my expectations. I thought they'd be good. I thought this is a 7, 8, 9-win team. They ended up being a 9-win team.
Did you think the league, I hate to cut you off, did you think the league would be a little bit better than it was?
I did. I thought West Jefferson was going to be real good. And to see them struggle, I think 3-7 maybe.
The quarterback is the coach's son, big time numbers.
Yeah.
We invited him. I helped put on the 7-on-7 that happened at Bell Fountain. Old habits are hard to break sometimes. West Liberty Salem. At Bell Fountain. And we invited Boucher, I believe is his name.
Bisher.
Okay.
Trust me,
yeah, it looks like
Boucher. Yeah, you'll get blasted on Yappy.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I don't want to get blasted on Yappy. I've been blasted on Yappy. I've been blasted on JJ Huddle back in the day. That surprises me. At that level, you just think with a quarterback like that, immediately 6-7 wins.
I was shocked. I mean, I thought 9-1, 10-0. I thought they were going to be the cream of the crop in the OHC. And it goes to show last year, you look back, going back to West Liberty at that game, that was West Liberty Salem's one loss last year. And it was a shootout. It was 60-something to 40-something, and those receivers that they had last year were such difference makers because they didn't lose a whole lot. They lost some on the offensive line. They got their quarterback back. They carried that team, and they lost so much production. You look at Bisher this year in that West Liberty game, the one game I watched, he couldn't even throw the ball down the field because they couldn't go get the ball. It was a totally different offensive concept and play calling, and it really affected them. And it shocked me because, that kid's getting D1 looks as a junior. He's got a ton of talent. He's shattering records. I think he was first team All-State last year as a quarterback, and they didn't pull it off. I was shocked by it.
Well, we have some molds that we place, whether it be in the bar or online, and some of my sources have told me via text message that maybe they lost some kids, that there were some kids that quit, that maybe they were counting on that didn't work out.
You got West Jeff guys texting?
I got guys everywhere.
Yeah, well, they'll let you know that.
We're big at West.
Yeah, and every injury. Yeah, I feel like Is this what's that restaurant downtown, Bill?
Downtown West Jeff.
Yeah.
I don't. Is it Antoni's or something?
Yeah, it's an Italian place. I feel
Antoni's,
like
I think.
that maybe
Antonio's or something like that.
So the one. So I thought West Liberty, like going into the season, I thought, okay, that's a really good football team. But then they struggle against Ben Logan early on. Correct? They only win by 10 points, something like that.
Looking at the Urbana scrimmage and the Graham game, as a matter of fact, I think I texted Bill after
Look
that,
at this right now.
and I said this may be the best defense I've seen in this school's history.
Yeah.
And they were dominant. You look at a team like Urbana, who went 7-3, 8-2 this year. Urbana had one first down against the varsity defense. Then you went to Graham. Graham, varsity on varsity, had 0 first downs, and it was just this dominant defense. I didn't expect the offense to take off like it did. And then you go into that Ben Logan game, and Ben Logan, a program that's been struggling. By the way, I think Paul Jennings is a great coach, and I think he's going to turn that program around.
Well, they have a plan. Bill and I interviewed Coach Jenny this summer, and then Bill and I called the game. Certainly, we were impressed with Wyatt Predmore, their freshman quarterback, but he is a freshman.
Yeah.
Ben Logan definitely, I thought, was improved, especially with how they would lose. I know that's sometimes a little bit of a cop-out, but they didn't. They look back now. If I'm a Ben Logan guy, I'm saying, hey, we lost by, was it 10, something like that?
It was close,
It was 2 scores.
31-20.
We lost by 10 points to the state semifinalists. I'm hanging my hat on that if I'm in the weight room right now barking at kids.
Sure, and the score didn't really dictate how the game went. If you look at like the total yardage and a couple other things, West Liberty kind of dominated. But Ben Logan fought and kept it close. And at that point, yes, there was some concern there. And I go from this best defense in school history to a bunch of freshmen and sophomores that rushed for 180 yards against this defense that I thought was impenetrable at the point. That was kind of the eye opener there. And again, all credit to Benjamin Logan. I thought after that team was going to win 5 games. I thought they were going to be in the hunt for the CBC Mad River Division.
We thought, after, I don't know if I would have gone that far, but we felt like, I said they would win 3, and I think that's what they won.
They did.
Now, they acted like they weren't going to get there. They waited till right at the end of the season. We felt like they played really hard, like you said. And the other thing is, I felt like they had a plan, which at times I wasn't always sure about that with Ben Logan. I feel like Paul Jennings knows who he wants to be.
Yeah.
And, the dude has coached a lot of places. He's coached at Jonathan Alder, took them to the playoffs. He's coached at Xenia. He knows football. So, West Liberty leads that game, like you said, maybe felt a little like, okay, maybe expectations should be tempered a little bit, or maybe just Ben Logan's be really good. I feel like, and you kind of agree, the OHC, maybe they had some time then to figure it out. There wasn't a lot of the Greenview game. Obviously comes next. So I guess I kind of need to back up. They get boat raced by Greenview.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call that boat race. You look at the score and it's a boat race. Number one, and I'll never say one player can dictate the outcome of a game because they can't. But Josh Wilcoxon was out. I think he got hurt in that Ben Logan game, missed part of that. The best tackler on that team by far, on West Liberty's team this year. Obviously the running back that rushed for over 1,000 yards despite missing 2.5 games, he was out. And that game was 21-14 heading into the fourth quarter.
Okay, and I didn't realize
People
that.
don't realize
I got
that.
you, yeah.
It was not a boat race. And then West Liberty Salem, who goes into this game, at that point their identity is still this rushing team. There was a quarterback battle to find out who the starting quarterback was 3 weeks prior in
Nick Shiflett and Hunter
and
Knotts.
Hunter Knotts. So they don't have that identity yet. You look at that Greenview game, they're trying to figure it out. We don't have Josh. We're with our second string running back. We're trying to run the ball. Greenview is a stout defense. They're a good football team. And it's 21-14 heading into the fourth quarter. It starts to get a little bit panicky. I think there was a pick six in there. And then all of a sudden we're trying to air the ball out. And it was just this series of events that affected the outcome and made it look like it was an absolute blowout when in all reality it was not. I was not worried about that. As a former coach, a football guy, I kind of hoped, there was a part of me, and I don't mean to jump ahead, come playoff time, where part of me wanted that Indian Lake, West Liberty, Logan County battle, but a big part of me is also having a player on this team wanted Greenview again because I think we can beat Greenview healthy, which we were at that point. Just if things went a little bit, now that we had an identity, things went differently. So, didn't happen. I was happy, obviously either way who won that game, but I think that game was a little bit deceiving in the grand scheme of things. And I think people have used that against us all year.
Well, yeah, certainly, honestly, it deceived me because, if you don't dig in too much to it, you just see that score, and you say, oh, wow, okay. And I guess that's what I was getting at. The Ben Logan game is closer than you would have guessed, a team that is supposed to be really talented, and then the Greenview result. So after that, though, they do kind of get into the OHC, and they're able to get their feet under them and pretty much sail the rest of the year. They have maybe one close call there later in the year?
You had the Northeastern game. That was in the monsoon. That's one of those games where, I'm sitting there. I've never been so soaked and cold in my life.
Yeah.
I ended up standing clear at the top of the stands and watching that. No, never felt like it was, even though I think it was 24-21 was the final. It was a close game. No, I never felt discomfort in that. Fairbanks, yes. I think that Fairbanks game's one we dodged the bullet. And I think that kind of propelled us into the playoffs because I feel like Fairbanks that night was the better football team and we stole one.
Well, we listened to that. I ride home with Brian Lorette, who's here tonight. And Tips and I would have been down at Kent Ridge. We weren't on air that night, but we rode back and we listened to the end of that game. And holy cow, that was stunning. Kicker, field goal, Dean Cole, right, to win it.
And he struggled.
And had missed something. Yeah, I remember that. Now I don't really know, and maybe had they lost that game, obviously they're still making the playoffs.
Sure.
Certainly would have messed with the seeding. Now, when you go and win the region, you say, well, you maybe going to win the region regardless. Right. But they go into the playoffs and draw first round is Arcanum, who ended up being, on paper, now, a close game. 41-26. Is that a little deceiving?
It is a game. Yeah. So one thing about this West Liberty Salem. So let me back up to that Fairbanks game. I think that game defined the character of this team heading into the playoffs, and it was the fact we talked about they were so versatile that I've never seen a West Liberty Salem team where they've got four dudes who can get the ball in their hand and break a 70-yard run. I've never seen that from a West Liberty Salem team. Is this the best West Liberty Salem team ever? No, I'm not going to say that. But you have four dudes who can do that. And then you put this identity in that, hey, we believe we can win any game that we're in. And that takes you into the playoffs, and you get there. And there's still some holes. So this West Liberty Salem defense that, again, in the preseason in week one, I'm saying to Bill, this is the best defense in the history of the school. All of a sudden becomes, at times, it looks like the best defense in the history of the school. At times, they're a bend, not break defense. And they're suspect to the big play. In that Arcanum game, they gave up a couple of big plays. Again, some of it was in scrap time, but again, it was one of those games where you never felt like the game was going to be close. 41-26 looks semi-close, but again, I don't think it was.
Started up front. The defensive line, I know when I was talking to both McGills, Andy and Dan, you know, you got Bear, Mark Bear, is that his name?
Mark, yeah.
Mark Bear, big, strong looking dude. His dad is closer to my age, was state champion wrestler at Graham back in, I think he's a class of 96. This was when Graham was good at wrestling, but they weren't just churning out state champions. So it was a big deal when Dan Bear won the state title. So his boy comes with some good pedigree. You've got Dan's son, Luke, is on that D line.
Yep.
And then the ends, you've got
Taryn Logwood
and Carson Poppy.
Yep.
So you got 4 names. I mean, these are guys that come with some credentials and have played. You know, some of them are deep. You know, one of the Logwood kid's really good at basketball, right? He's kind of the best player there, one of the best. And then at linebacker, you got Wilcoxon. Now, I'm going to go back to Wilcoxon. My guess is, and maybe I'm wrong, losing him at running back, I'm just saying this as a coach, you got maybe another guy, the Stidham kid, maybe a couple Stidham kids, right?
Yeah.
2 of them. You can find a guy sometimes, when you lose a linebacker, like to me, and every team I've ever coached, we've never had a good backup Mike Backer. Like, he would be playing. If he was a good backup Mike Backer, he'd be playing outside backer.
Right.
Like, so when you lose that dude, I would guess that hurts when Wilcoxon's down.
It's huge, yeah. And like you said, specifically defensively, I believe it was Shiflett who went in at linebacker.
Now you're playing your quarterback.
Now your quarterback's playing middle linebacker.
Oh, wow.
How big is that dude, Shiflett?
He's big. I mean, he's not tall, but he's bulky, strong kid. I mean,
Riley Sims-esque?
No, I think he's thick. I think he's
Thicker
thicker
than Riley?
Yeah.
But Riley's a physical dude. I know I'm just going back and grabbing a guy.
was,
But
yeah.
I think of a physical West Liberty quarterback. He was a dude that would run like a rhino a little bit.
I would say you're probably right. You know, Shiflett's probably a little more aggressive than Riley was, but it's probably the closest comparison.
You talked about some of those skill players. Obviously, Dan talked to me when I did the preseason, Garage Sports did a preseason all-area team, and maybe you said the same thing. Jack Bayhan is a guy that didn't have any stats last year because he was hurt, right?
He was hurt. That was
and
it.
I think Dan said it, maybe you said it. I think, he said, this dude needs to be on there. And I believe I put him on there just based off of that recommendation. He had a huge year.
He's a difference maker. I mean, we're going to get to that Ironton game, I'm sure, here shortly, but he scored 2 touchdowns against Ironton.
Yeah.
Nobody else could
kickoff returns.
Nobody else could even gain a yard.
Right.
And he's out there returning kickoffs for touchdowns.
Does he play basketball?
He does not. Super fast. You know, the injury last year hurt West Liberty Center. We didn't throw much last year. But he's fast. He's got great hands. He's not afraid to go up and fight for a football when it's in the air. And he's definitely one of those guys.
And then you got Evans. There's a guy they got the ball. He was probably the second leading receiver. I feel like.
Yeah, and I'd say Evans is more of an aggressive, bully over type receiver, but he's also got that breakaway capability.
And the Stidham kid, back to him. How do you say his first name?
Josiah.
Yeah. His brother has a Naaman. Okay, Naaman. Josiah did pretty well. Like when he was in there, and it seemed like it kind of lingered too. Like even when Wilcoxon came back, I'm doing the stats. So I'm like, okay, he's still getting the ball some. He was still involved in the offense.
Well, and Josh was not healthy all year. People don't realize that either.
What was his injury?
Something with his leg, but okay. I know he's got to have surgery. I don't know it's either leg or hip, and one of those things. And he has to have surgery. Like I think he's losing his senior track year, and they're waiting to get through the season. So having Josiah, who I think ended up with 500-600 yards, as his backup, able to go in and give Josh a series off was huge for that team, and it goes back to that versatility we talked about.
You have a staff. I know I'm switching a little gears. You have a staff that's been together for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, so John McGill, Dan's cousin, calls the defense. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And Dan calls the offense.
He calls the offense. He's got Brad Jarzab, on top of the press box in his headset, and they're talking constantly and bouncing things off each other.
Tips, do you remember the Jarzab kid?
Yes, he was.
I know he's not a kid anymore. Like 2010, 2012?
It was Spitty's third year at Bellefontaine.
Okay.
And they went to the finals and lost to Mooney.
To Mooney in a close game.
Yes,
was a
by
one
touchdown.
touchdown.
He was the quarterback. He was a dynamite with they didn't throw it a lot. They had a big offensive line, and but he was just so good with the way he handled the ball. The ball handling. Sure. And I always thought, never met the guy yet, but he always looked as a player, a guy I could see being a coach. Like he just had a feel for football. I don't know what he's like.
He's got that, man. I like Brad a lot, and I think, in the event that someday Dan steps down, I think West Liberty Salem has a guy in-house who can take over that program.
School resource officer?
He is, yes, sir.
Yeah, I actually asked that to someone, like, I would guess that's a decent job to be a head football coach, right? I mean, we talked about, you had mentioned off air that working at Humble and coaching football is difficult.
Yeah.
You couldn't be a head football coach and be a Humble
I couldn't be an assistant coach, or
well, right. But I would guess school resource officer is a pretty good place to be. Now, I don't quite know, I don't know all about their job, but I know our school resource officer works our hours. So, yeah, that's, what you're talking, 30 years old, a little over 30, young guy. So, nice to have, I know, so spending a lot of time in programs that it's nice to have a guy in the wings where you say, because, obviously Dan's under coach forever, and this is his last son, correct?
Yeah.
Second son. And so, at some point he'll step aside. And,
Plus his dad was a former head coach too, Sean Jarzab.
And he's on the staff.
Yeah, I know.
now, where was he a head coach at?
Northwestern.
Oh, okay.
And they were not bad.
No, he did a decent job with him for sure.
So getting back to the playoffs, the region, the Tigers handle Arcanum, then they draw Miami East, blowout.
It was. That kind of shocked me too. I thought Miami East was going to be better than they were. I thought Arcanum was better than Miami East. I mean, that was a game, probably, I'd say, from a stat standpoint, that was the most prolific offensive performance I've seen from that school in a really long time. I mean, they just went off. They could not do anything defensively to slow us down.
60-some points.
Yeah.
62.
Yeah.
The next game, Waynesville, is where, honestly, just, and I'm rooting for West Liberty, but I don't know everything that's going on. I'm looking at scores. On paper, I thought, okay, this is probably where the party ends.
Sure.
Because Waynesville, I'm really good friends with a guy named Matt King, who's the head coach at Valley View.
Yeah.
And Matt King, coached here with us, and that conference is a little different, honestly. I believe in the CBC or the OHC. Like,
Absolutely.
if you're in the SWBL and you're good, you're usually pretty good.
Yeah.
And Waynesville's been there. Now, I think Valley View did smoke Waynesville this year, but Waynesville's been in they've been in some battles. And I thought, okay, on paper, this is where West Liberty's in trouble. Close game, but
I thought I'm going to be completely honest with you, and there's probably West Liberty people watching. I thought the same thing. I'm like, these guys are good. And I think about 3 drives into that game, I looked at Waynesville and I thought, this is the best football team I've seen West Liberty Salem play all year. We are going to get smoked. And they looked like the better team. They came out on fire. They were dominating the line of scrimmage. We couldn't slow them down offensively. They were running for chunks, 7, 8, 9, 10 plus yards. Quarterback was able to throw the ball a little bit. Defensively, they were fast. They were flying to the football. We could not do anything. And I thought, again, in the first quarter, I'm like, this is it. We're done. Been a great ride, but we're done. And then something, again, you talk about that fight with this team this year, clicked with that team, with our team. Waynesville kind of went into a panic mode and started throwing the football, which gave West Liberty Salem time to put pressure on the quarterback and disrupt it. And I think that's the game Taryn Logwood, who was good all year, turned into, I'm going to go back to saying a dude. I mean, something clicked in that guy, and he was able to just put so much pressure, get his outside contained, blow past the offensive tackle, get into the backfield, get pressure on the quarterback, and next thing you know, we're up 21 points against Waynesville, looking like we're not the better team. And going into halftime with all this momentum, and it was incredible.
ended up having to hold on a little bit for dear life, right? Doesn't Waynesville furiously
Waynesville
come
came
back?
out and showed that they're a good football team, and they did. And we struggled, and of course we changed our offense up a little bit. And you're a former coach, you do the same thing. You're going to get a little more conservative. You're going to try and run the clock down. We had a long touchdown called back. Because of a block in the back that happened 25 yards behind the play, that always gets me. That was my first high school touchdown, was a block in the back 25 yards behind me.
So hold on, I want to hear about this. Now you score and someone commits a block in the back.
Yeah, 25 yards.
Who did that?
It was a receiver, I believe.
You don't remember the guy's name?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah,
personally?
no,
Oh, yeah,
no,
Bob Webb.
Bob Webb.
Yeah, I remember
Bob,
it. Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
That was at
That would be
Mechanicsburg.
Bob.
Yeah.
I
It was
wondered
like
if
a
that was
68-yard
Bob.
run.
He always did
Furthest
that.
I've ever ran in my life without chest pains. Yeah.
Matt and I played together.
I know.
So he's 2 years
I know.
behind me.
I know.
My senior year, we were 4-6 at West Liberty Salem. It was a typical 1990s West Liberty Salem team. Now, I will say, I honestly think my senior year was one of the worst versions of those 90s kind of 500 West Liberty Salem, because we weren't very talented. My senior class had 6 guys. So guys like Matt were playing as a sophomore. The year before me, Andy McGill, who we talked about, he's a 97 grad. My junior year, I played outside linebacker. That was a year where we had some dudes, and we still managed to be 5-5. I'm not saying I was one of the dudes, but Andy McGill was a great football player. Drew Heminger was a great football player. Gary Davis was a good football player. We had some guys. Nick Long went to Wittenberg and started there. But West Liberty had that run, and Matt was a part of it. And then your senior year was Coach Toby Smith's first year.
Correct.
That was not as strong, but that was a transition year. But that West Liberty was known, the 5-5, 4-6, and
It was us, 500 football.
would beat all the bad teams in the WCOC and then lose to all the good teams, but often close. A lot of good games there where a 9-1 league champ would only beat us by a touchdown or so. So, that's neither here nor there. But Waynesville, obviously, that to me at the time was the best football team West Liberty had played, like you said.
I agree.
Huge win.
Yeah.
And Indian Lake at the same time is getting a huge win over Greenview, right?
They were.
That is the alternate game. Guys like me probably thought it was Greenview versus Waynesville in the regional final, and instead it's Indian Lake, West Liberty, which is just insane. Like, take the talent out, just the idea that West Liberty Salem playing Indian Lake in the regional final is kind of hard to believe it even happened. And that's an Indian Lake team, and I'll let you talk about them. Well, actually, I'd like to hear you talk about them. In the summer, I thought they were very similar to West Liberty. Good dudes everywhere. You got some good linemen. Now, linemen, they maybe were a little less. Good skill players, good defensive players, good D-line, very similar to West Liberty. When we saw them, didn't see their best night in Indian Lake.
Matt and I texted about this. We've texted a lot the last month. We really haven't talked until tonight.
Hey, throw me in on that text.
All right. Sorry. I missed you. Because you and I do the Bell Fountain games for WBCS in Horvath. When we left Indian Lake Stadium that night, which was week 5, I didn't, and this is not a knock on Indian Lake, this is actually going to be very complimentary when I get to the end. I didn't say, oh my goodness, Bell Fountain beat a good football team. I thought they beat maybe an average football team. I also thought, I'm trying to run this by Rick, and he's going to have an opinion right away. I also thought they were not as good as Indian Lake in 23. And sometimes it does come down to matchups, which I'm sure Matt will have an opinion on this too. The good news for Indian Lake, though, is they rebounded. They won 5 straight in the league. So at that point, they were chumming along for the playoffs. Then they won 3 more to get to West Liberty Salem. But I don't know what Coach Ramp would say right now. I still don't think they're as good from what I saw, just the one time I saw them, as last year's Indian Lake team, which got to the playoffs and played Coldwater week 1 and got beat soundly. So sometimes it is matchups. I tip my hat. They had a great run, the best run in school history. I'm still not sure they're as good as last year's Indian Lake.
Yeah, I don't know. Now, I'm biased. Last year's Indian Lake team had us, Bell Fountain, tied at the half. So certainly, but then the second half, we kind of pulled away from them. Certainly, they lost a few dudes from last year's team that I would agree with you. But man, I felt like they had more balance this year. Now, not so much when they played Bell Fountain. That was just kind of, that is what it is. Which, we've talked about this many times about Indian Lake, and I've said this to Coach Rapp. At Bell Fountain, we almost always get Indian Lake's best shot. We did not get Indian Lake's best shot this season. It just, the way it worked out, it just wasn't their best shot. I think if that game's played again, it could be closer. Now, I think Bell Fountain is the better football team, but, Bell Fountain's in Division 3, and West Liberty and Indian Lake are in Division 5, and that's for a reason. I mean, you play the teams that are your size. But I was always impressed with Indian Lake as far as just the amount of good football players they had. And that's kind of how I described West Liberty. You got 7, 8, 9 dudes where you're like, that's a good football player.
Well, they had a bunch. Matt Lillard, which he replaced his brother, who I thought was a gamer, tough kind of guy, quarterback in 23. But Quest Clay, Cosby, Reisinger. I mean, they have some guys.
it felt like Matt Lillard must have gotten a lot better as the season went on.
I would agree with
It felt
that.
like early in the season he was maybe struggling, but those later games, we're just looking at the stats. We're like, okay, Matt Lillard's now throwing for 200, 300 yards, getting into those guys. Reisinger really impresses me. I don't know if you know who we're talking about. Brody Reisinger.
Tall receiver.
He handled the ball. He's like 6'2". He handled the ball. We watched your game, West Liberty versus the Lake. He did handle it a little bit. They ran the ball a lot in that game.
Right.
But he and Cosby, to me, are and Quest Clay are dudes. Like they're some of the best ones I've ever seen at Indian Lake as far as skill guys go.
I agree.
So you go into that game. You guys have not seen. I mean, is there common opponents there? Ben Logan, right? That's
Actually, quite a few. You had Ben Logan, you had Graham, and you had Greenview going into that game. So we had 3 common opponents. What could you tell off of it? Not much. I mean, we beat the tar out of Graham. They went to overtime. Greenview beat the tar out of us on the scoreboard. Again.
Right.
And they beat Greenview. And then Ben Logan, they beat the tar out of, and it was close. So I don't think there's anything you could take from our common opponents to say, well, this team looks like the
they were contradictory.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, so you get, and the game's played at Piqua, which we can talk a little bit about that. That is just disgusting.
Terrible.
In a word, it's disgusting that game is played at Piqua. If there's ever been a game in the history of high school football that should have been played at Bell Fountain High School, it's West Liberty. It literally could not be. I guess maybe DeGraff, maybe Riverside and West Liberty might be a little closer, but it is literally in between. And obviously that didn't happen because Bell Fountain chose not to host games, which is just. I think we all agree that we built that beautiful stadium for a reason, and that we need to be hosting football games in it. And what a night that would have been. I would have guessed we got to call at tips. I think, right? Horvath would have done it. We got to call. We'd have been nice and warm up in the booth. I love that. We wouldn't have gotten any pizza, but I might have bought some. We never got fed the pizza. They feed people in the booth. There's free pizza. Certain people get free pizza. Tipple and I never got a bite. Now, Dairy Queen did hook us up. Dow McDonald and the Dairy Queen and Chris Leisure, they hooked us up with some cheap hamburgers. So we got some more burgers that night. That was, honestly,
I lost all control.
Yeah, I got really excited about that game, and I took some time at Garage Sport for what it's worth and dug into some of those past games. Indian Lake has handled. I was a little surprised how lopsided that was. I think it was like 30-9 or something like that. It was, if you remember me right, Matt. There was a ton of close games, and Matt and I played in a few of them. Matt's freshman year, my junior year, we beat the Lake at Indian Lake in overtime. So that was one of the few that West Liberty got. But that to me used to be a really good rivalry.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I talked to Coach Rapp and Coach McGill about playing each other this summer. When we interviewed them, I said, why don't you guys play? And they both said, we talked about it. We would like to get together. Because that game makes a ton of sense in the outer conference. And then crazy thing is it happens in the regional final. You go into that game, how did you feel? You said Waynesville, you kind of felt like, okay, this is probably, we're up against it. How do you feel about the Lake?
A lot more confident than Waynesville. Yeah. I mean, and then not taking anything away from Indian Lake because obviously, Indian Lake was a team that I thought was going to get beat by Versailles. They beat Versailles. The second round was Preble Shawnee. Thought they were going to get beat by Preble Shawnee. I mean, is Shawnee that great? No, they weren't this year, but I just felt like, Indian Lake's kind of just limping through this. They somehow beat Versailles, who I thought was going to be, them and Bath were going to be the favorites to win the region. And they beat Shawnee, and then they go and beat Greenview. And I'm like, there's no way they're beating Greenview. So Indian Lake plays this underdog role going in, to this game, and yet I felt, I wouldn't say confident. I knew we would have to play well and execute, but I wasn't. It wasn't like the Waynesville game where I thought we were going to get beat. I mean, I just didn't think that. And we went out and they punched us in the mouth. I mean, they came out and they drove down the field. I think we fumbled on our second play of the game. It was our first play of the game. They drove down. We got the 3-and-out. Then we took over. We fumbled the football, gave them the ball back, and they went down and scored. And it's just like, oh my gosh, here they go again. Talk about the fight of this Indian Lake Laker team that they can come out and they're not intimidated at all. I mean, it was evident, and put up a heck of a fight to start that game.
And So West Liberty ends up winning by a score.
It was a touchdown. Yep.
Indian Lake has a chance there, kind of late, if I remember, just off memory.
They did. Yeah, they were to tie the game.
There was talk of would they have gone for 2? Where do you stand on that?
I think they would have. I mean,
feel like they would
in a
have.
game like that, what do you have to lose? I think both people knew what was coming, after that game. So let's go ahead and get there. And I feel like Indian Lake, they rolled the dice several times in that game. So did West Liberty Salem. West Liberty Salem, kicked an onside kick in that game, or I'm sorry, faked a punt in that game, and there were several things in that game that happened that it's like these guys are ready to roll the dice against each other. It's a local rivalry, even though they don't play, which I agree with you. That game should, to me, be on the schedule every year.
Yeah.
That's a great matchup, and yeah, 100%. If they score that touchdown, I think they're going for 2.
So you talked about the devil that was waiting in round 15 now. State semifinals.
There's a devil, Rick.
The Ironton Tigers, which was, obviously it's a historic program. I'm very well aware of them, but never really looked into them until that next day. So I pull up the stuff I can. I say, oh, wow. They have 5 Division I players. They have 5 dudes that have offers.
Yeah.
And one's their backup quarterback. One is a freshman tight end who I believe played against West Liberty as the game went on. And then one dude, a DB that's going to Penn State, I believe, right? Johnson. And then there's a receiver going to Missouri. Is that right?
Yep. Terry was it.
And then maybe another tight end going to
Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's different. I mean, there's just it's different.
It's different. And, I talked to some people, and I think we all kind of knew what everybody was saying was a real possibility. And what everybody was saying was, listen, you go to Fantastic 50, which is a great website that does score predictions. And we're the biggest underdog in the state of Ohio last week. It's a 39-point spread. This is where I'd struggle as a coach. How do kids see that? Kids aren't stupid. They're going to see, hey, we're a 39-point underdog. As a matter of fact, Ironton's posting it on their TikTok and their Facebook and letting West Liberty know that they're a 39-point favorite. Your hope is, maybe they're going to come out and they're going to be overconfident. We're going to come in with this chip on the shoulder. There's 0 common opponents anywhere near each other. So how do you know that Ironton, just because they've got 28 Division I scholared athletes, is so much better than the little corn-fed boys from West Liberty Salem? How do you know that? Well, we found out real quick.
I guess the term I would use is a gambler's house money. And certainly I think, but I've been wrong before when I look at things, but it definitely looked like that was going to be a tough trip to Chillicothe. But it's a trip, to me, you say as a coach, and I've been in those situations where you're coaching and you pretty much know that barring something credible that you can't predict, it's going to be a blowout.
Sure.
I guess I would just look at it as we're gonna have a great week of practice. We're gonna have a little bit of fun. We're gonna prepare. Obviously, we're not gonna be goofy, but we're gonna prepare and we're gonna have a great trip. And whatever happens when we get there is gonna happen. But they're never gonna be able to take away what's happened from us. We are the first team in Logan County to ever go to the state Final Four. And, and I know I catch some grief when people say, you say West Liberty Salem's Logan County. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
West Liberty is in Logan County. Until 1989, the high school was a Logan County. So it's both. West Liberty is a Logan County and a Champaign County school. Yeah. And so they're the first school in our county's history to go to the semifinals. And obviously, I almost think if you send me to the semis and you say you're going to lose a game that's a heartbreaker, that's going to gnaw at you the rest of your life, which for us last year that was Bishop Watterson in the regional finals. I'll never feel good about that. And we know how good Watterson was, but we could have won. We were winning with 9 minutes to go. I'll never get over that. If you told me I could trade that for losing to Ironton, I would trade it because then it's like, well, what we're going to do.
Yeah, I'm not taking that, Rick.
Well,
I'm taking that close game, man, every time.
I get it, but it's just the close game keeps you up at night, and especially as the coach and the guy that's calling the plays and stuff like that, that will always haunt you. Whereas when there is some element of, hey, what are we going to do? This is a different machine. And I don't know. It allows you to sleep at least.
Well, that machine caused me to rip the Champaign County tag off my license plate as I was pulling out.
Well, you're driving illegally.
I'm messing. I get what you're saying. I mean, it's you kind of know what. I'm curious. You know, I obviously have a son on the football team, and I talked to him and said, "Do you guys believe?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think we do." And of course, he said, "Yeah, there's a couple kids who say we're going to get family-friendly show. We're going to get our butts kicked."
It's not that family.
It's not. I can say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, there's a couple kids who believe that. So that maybe gives you some belief, and then you get to that game, and the atmosphere. I showed up, I think, almost an hour early, and I walk in the home gate and the Ironton stands, which are the home stands, which are big. I mean, they're big stands. The away stands weren't very big, but at Chillicothe, you walk in and you see our crowd, and there's like 30 people up there, and I'm like, all right, not bad for an hour before. And I turn around and look up, and their stands are full, and there's buses with tigers painted on them, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. What is going to happen here? But you come out and you take the field. We filled our stands. The atmosphere to start the game was great.
You thought you traveled well?
I do. I think that's the best crowd. And again, the stands were small, so it's tough to tell. When we played at Pickwood the week before, we filled maybe a quarter of it. But Chillicothe, I feel like the crowd was bigger. It's great. I saw a couple of people from Greenview, some players and dad sitting in front of us, and I thought we got some good local support for as far away as it was, and we came out and they're out there warming up. One guy doesn't even have a shirt on. It's 12 degrees, and I'm like, oh my God.
Sending messages.
Yeah.
Big dudes, just because some coaches and fans get in that, the look test where you look across the field, you're like, holy moly.
I don't know if that was the issue. The one thing West Liberty Salem did have this year, we did have some size. We had numbers. I'd say some jack dudes. I've seen their Facebook posts. And
Yeah,
these guys in the locker room.
Holy
And,
cow,
yeah,
the weight
it looks
room's
like
impressive.
they got 75 Ric Flairs in his prime. Actually, Ultimate Warriors on the other side. But you can't really see that in warm-ups.
Well, they're a machine.
They're a machine.
They're different.
It is. It's a different.
Now, you had said, and we'll get to, we're going to transition here to some of these state finals games, and we'll start with the Ironton matchup in the finals, who they're playing 15-0 Liberty Center, who, I don't know if I'd call them machine, but they've got a tradition of their own. They're no slouches. You had a quasi-hot take that you think Ironton would beat Marion Local.
I do. Watching that team. So I look, the infamous question in our area is what makes the MAC so good? What makes Marion Local, Coldwater, Delta St. John when they're up, St. Henry, Versailles, what makes these guys so good? And, the only answer I can give to that is, number one, it's faith family football up there. Yeah. And these people, it's their life. It's one of their top three things. Number two is you've got 11 kids on the field who every kid is just doing his job, and he's doing it well. And there's no selfish attitude where if I don't get the ball, I'm going to throw a fit. There's 11 guys who are doing their individual job, and they're going out and they're beating the piss out of everybody they play. So you look at a team like Ironton, and this is the first team I have ever seen in 35 plus years of watching high school football where they've got 11 guys who are doing their job, but they've also got 11 guys who are Division I college athletes. It's a whole different caliber. So if I feel like after watching that game, and you look at that game, and I'm not taking, West Liberty Salem, I'm so proud of those kids, what they've accomplished, the coaches, what they accomplished. This was a special team, and they did great things, and I couldn't be more proud of them. But you look at that team, and the score wasn't even. We couldn't gain a yard. We couldn't do anything offensively. We couldn't throw the football. They were running from side. I've compared it to like the old Tecmo Super Bowl game where you had Bo Jackson when they handed it off or completed a pass, where he'd go to one sideline, go all the way across the field to the other sideline, and then just for fun, he'd zigzag his way down the field and make 20 guys miss. Yeah, it was something different. That is a special football team. It's like they should not be playing in D5. I feel like they could compete in, all the way up to probably D2. I mean, I think they could compete with an Avon and the Toledo Central Catholic who are playing tonight, and I don't know the update of that score, but I've never seen, especially in a state semifinal game, a complete domination. I've never seen a domination like that in a regular season game. I mean, you take Kenton in their prime against Ridgemont, and I don't think it's that much of a domination, and then that speaks, just
Tipple disagrees.
I mean,
I don't know.
It was the Wildcats.
It was insane. And again, this is a great West Liberty Salem football team who won a regional title and earned a trip to the state Final Four, and they couldn't do anything against this team.
You know, we have noticed, and maybe it's always been this way, but there's a lot of discrepancy in high school football of the very best and even good and great. And I don't think you see that at other levels like college or pros. Like in high school, you can be really good like West Liberty Salem is, and then you can be just unbelievably good, which is Ironton. And that's the one thing I like about Pasteur is he gives us, and those of us that worship at the altar of Pasteur, that he is the dude. He ranks them, I think, 12th or 13th in the state, regardless of division.
I just looked at 12, but he's got Marion local.
He's got Marion local
4, which that one intrigues me. I would pay a lot of money to see Marion local play Olentangy Liberty. My guess is that Liberty would win.
Sure.
Yes, because what you're saying is those other teams play with discipline too, and they've got dudes that you would assume it would be the discipline and the dudes.
Right.
And and Marion has tried. Like in their defense, they played Franklin this year. They have scheduled. Who was the really good school they scheduled? Watterson at one point. And we played at Bell Fountain. We played Coldwater, so they're not afraid of anyone. Now, unfortunately, what we even learned about Fountain is it can be a dangerous game to play those MAC teams.
Yeah.
And we took some criticism online. Your buddy The Voice got after us and said that we were running from Coldwater, which is just stupid because the thing is, first of all, it's a home and home. That's your agreement.
Sure.
And I was a part of the decision to schedule Coldwater, and it came at the right time. We knew we were going to be good. We knew we had Tavian St. Clair. At the time, though, when we signed him, Tavian St. Clair wasn't Tavian St. Clair. He was a good up-and-coming quarterback. He wasn't a five-star guy. So we scheduled him, and we lost. Now, we feel like we could have won both of those games, but the MAC has a way of doing that to you where, you're like, man, we played just bad enough to lose, and they find a way to win. But then we didn't re-sign him, and I was a part of that decision because, honestly, we just weren't sure how good we were going to be. And it was, you don't want to play Coldwater if you're not going to have one of your best teams because
Absolutely.
you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, conceptually losing an out-of-conference game. We've lost plenty of them over the years. But you don't want to put your kids in the spot like you're saying with Ironton. Certainly you wouldn't schedule them out of conference. No part of that.
No.
But if you want to play in the state semis, we'll do it. But do you feel like Ironton, so, obviously we don't know a ton about Liberty Center, but you feel like that's just Ironton all the way?
Well, Liberty Center, I think, is hands down the second best team in Division 5, and I don't think it's close. But to answer,
Ironton's 10-point favorites.
yeah, I think that's light. Looking at what I saw from Ironton, and maybe West Liberty Salem just had that much of an off night. But again, I've never seen complete domination like I saw in that football game. And to me, Ironton, it would be like if the Cleveland Browns played the Ohio State Buckeyes. In theory, it's a good game, right? But in reality, it's a 63-21 final.
Well, I need Liberty Center to stay within 10 points.
You're
And
not.
a little pick-em thing that we do just for friendly,
Within 10?
family-friendly entertainment. I would like Liberty Center to keep it within 10.
My guess is Liberty Center's defense is strong enough to slow down Ironton a little bit, but I'm going to go with 35-14.
Okay. Oh, there we go. That's very specific. The game that's going on right now, Avon versus Anderson. I believe Avon is up.
I looked at 14-7 at half.
14-7 at half. I need Avon to win by 9 in our family-friendly pick'em.
What is this on FanDuel?
This is just a group of people that root for high school sports, and they make pick'ems and see it's family and friends who can pick the games the best. Avon beat Hoban. That was what I based off of. I just,
Hoban's great.
Hoban is, and Avon, I believe we said, has been to 9 straight regional finals. Brian Lorette's our fact checker. He would tell us whether that was correct or not. But I believe they've been to 9 straight. That's incredible. So I just, you're picking this stuff. Anderson, though, I've seen Anderson. I feel like, we used to go to the state finals every year, and I feel like we watched Anderson play at least once, if not twice. That's one of those Cincinnati
They
schools.
won it maybe 10 years ago, maybe.
And I feel like they're almost like a borderline D1 school. I feel like they're one of those schools that's like on the highest end of D2, which is a nice place to be in the new setup. Tips, you got any opinions here? Obviously,
I'm taking Avon.
Right,
I
you
would
got
pick
7-point buffer.
I would pick the winning game, though. I'm picking Ironton. I'll say, and I don't know this stuff as well as Matt. He's seen Ironton. I think they beat Liberty Center by maybe 2 touchdowns. 28-14.
Okay, we're close. I gave him an extra touchdown.
So I pick Ironton.
I don't know the order of the games. I used to kind of know that. Like I said, we used to go up there all the time. Back in the old days. Have you ever gone to the finals?
I've not. No.
Back in the old days, it was at Massillon and Canton, and that was awesome. And it's a long drive up there, but there's a group of guys here, Brian Harmon, Brian Lorette, Luke Varner. We would go every year, and it was awesome, especially when you're younger and, maybe don't have families at home and stuff.
I got the order.
But
I got the order.
you'd go back and forth between the 2 games. We had a nice place at a place called Park Suites Apartments. It was just a beautiful place. We made a lot of memories. But the Ohio State finals are an incredible time. And TV has screwed it up a little bit because it made guys that are getting to the middle-age years say, maybe I don't want to sit out in 27 degrees and flurries and a 13 wind chill. It tests how committed you are to the cause. Of course, I haven't gone in a few years, but they're just in Canton now, so it's just
Right.
and that's a whole new stadium. I feel like I haven't been to that. That's new, correct?
Redone, the whole
Tom
thing.
Benson,
Yeah,
redone.
nicer, fancier, that whole deal. So Tiff, tell us tomorrow.
Tomorrow starts at 10:30 a.m. there, Rick. It's Marion Local against Hillsdale, and I think that Marion Local is like a 40-point favorite, according to Mr. Baxter.
Well, that's good. So somebody's a bigger favorite than Ironton was last week against us.
I would guess they'll win by
44.
6. Wouldn't you think like 60?
That is the one game in the state of Ohio this weekend that is a lock. I mean,
They beat Shadyside 72-0, I believe, at one point.
the state championship in Division 7 was 2 weeks ago when Marion Local played Minster. And
Minster kept it kind of close.
They did. Well, they did in the regular season. So Minster hands down the second best team in Division 7.
Yeah.
Columbus Grove probably hands down the third best team. And Marion Local went through them both. And then on the other end, poor Hillsdale. That's who it is.
Yep.
And those poor kids. That's a rough game.
And that's a Hillsdale team that's certainly new to the party. Like, I don't feel like
Never been.
usually we talk about these like, okay, yeah, that's so and so.
By Ashland, they've never been before. They played Danville, who's been in a mix in Division 7 for a while.
Pasteur has Hillsdale 231st, which would be below like West Liberty Salem. So I mean,
Right.
just, obviously it's D7, but
It's like,
yeah,
I'll say like 50-0.
it's going to be ugly.
They're not scoring unless there's some freak accident, that happens in that game. I'm
Unless Jack Bayham starts returning kicks for Hillsdale, they're not scoring.
I'm saying like 57. Okay,
50.
50.
Afternoon game.
3 o'clock. Well, this one will interest you and me for sure, and some of the other guys here at the Craft Emporium. Columbus Watterson, 15-0, against the 2-time defending state champs, Toledo Central Catholic, who's 14-1.
In a rematch of last year, Watterson lost that game.
27-7.
Yeah, like 3 scores.
I think that, but Toledo Central Catholic last year was phenomenal. I think Watterson wins.
So I've actually seen Watterson in person this year.
Yeah,
So
at Tiffin, right?
yeah, we talked about
Now,
that.
why is
They
that?
played Columbian. So one game this year, my son was down and out bad against West Liberty played Southeastern, and couldn't even go to the school, go to the game or anything. And I've got a nephew who plays for Columbian, so we decided, hey, I'll never get a chance to watch.
Now,
them
Columbia's
play.
been pretty decent.
They have been, yeah. And I went up and watched Bishop Watterson. I think I texted Bill after that game and
They
told him
played last
they're
year.
going undefeated.
Watterson mauled them.
Yeah.
But last year was like a 1-point game.
And
was close.
yeah, last year
Yeah.
was real close. We watched the film on that when we played Watterson in the playoffs.
Watterson lost a lot of guys from last year's season.
But got a lot of transfers, is what I'm told. I mean, that's what I'm told.
Because I've had
And
that question around the school, like, what in the world?
Yeah.
So that's today's.
they have some dudes. I mean, they have some Ohio State dudes. Their quarterback, Belisari, is Greg's boy. Greg, I think Greg played linebacker for Ohio State. I believe he's the D coordinator versus us last year, if I remember right. But I kind of like Toledo with 11 wins. In our little family-friendly pick 'em. I took Toledo.
Are these all fantastic 50 lines?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, yeah, absolutely.
So
Not Vegas.
No, yeah, Vegas hasn't caught on yet.
Toledo's minus 11.
Toledo's plus 11.
Oh.
They're underdogs. To me, give me the
I agree
two-time
with you.
champs and 11 points.
I
think
agree.
Toledo has that knack to say, we're going to keep this thing close. I do think Watterson wins, but I don't think it's easy. I just think Toledo, I once coached against Toledo Central Catholic in wrestling in a duel, and they're just different. Like you talked about with Ironton, their dudes they're different. You talk about some jack dudes, I guarantee you they got some guys. And, so does Watterson, but we'll see.
I don't know. I don't get into the point spreads like this, but that's close. I think I'm going to say, just for good conversation, I think Waterson wins like 28-14, so I'll say over.
Oh, okay. I'm with Red. Who's the bookie here? Where do I put my phone? I like the 11.
Sutsy's got it.
I want, actually, give me Central Catholic straight up. It's plus 450 or something like that, right?
You're the super teaser. You're going 13 points on each side.
I'm going straight up. I do believe Toledo Central Catholic is going to pull that off tomorrow in one of the.
You think they win?
I think they do
Oh,
win. Yeah,
money line.
yeah. Trust me. When I saw Waterson in person against Columbia, who I think went 5-5 or 6-4, I did text you and tell you they're going undefeated, but it wasn't overly impressive. Like,
They have some results that are over.
They do. They had some
Hartman,
games.
I believe 41-0. Beating Sale, beat the
Yeah.
Smack 'em.
I'm taking it.
What's tomorrow night's game?
Tomorrow night, here's a look at the state finals. That'll be at 7:30. Cincinnati Moeller, who's got Mr. Football, quarterback.
Caden St. Clair, runner-up for Mr. Football. We found that out this afternoon.
Did not hear that.
And they're going to take on Olentangy Liberty. And Olentangy Liberty's 13-2, Moeller's 14-1. I don't know what Pastor says. I'm sure
Pastor
Moeller's
says Moeller by 20. Reed says Liberty plus 20. I will take Liberty. Liberty knocked off St. Ed's. Two-time, three-time defending state champs. Three-time, I think. I think they played Springfield 3 straight years, right?
Three.
I will take Liberty and 20 points. Now, I think Moeller wins the game, but I'll take a team that just beat St. Edward and 20 points.
But Moeller, and I don't know some of these teams in Division I very well, to be honest, Rick, but Moeller last in Centerville, like 49-10 last week.
Yeah.
Moeller's only losses are to Charlotte, Mallard Creek, North Carolina. That's off my radar. And
That's
I feel
it.
like they lost one. Oh, that's their only one. Yeah, so
Yeah,
not a lot of common
I
opponents.
don't see the lines like Rick, but I do think it's closer than 20. One thing, Olentangy Liberty just doesn't give up a lot of points.
Moeller
But
beat St. Edward by 5. It's just there is a common opponent there.
I think 14-ish, something like, I don't know, 28-14, 31-17, something like that. Moeller, though, I think wins.
20 points a tough spread because unless you're missing an extra point or something, that could go either way. I actually like that spread. I'm gonna go with you, Bill. I'm thinking 17, 14 point Moeller win somewhere in there.
Okay.
So then Saturday morning, you wake up, that awful 10:30 kick. If you've ever been to the state finals, that's the game that everybody skips.
Okay, it's Coldwater. This will be a good one because we're probably going to have some dissension here on our show. Coldwater 14-1. Only loss this year was to Marion Local. Kirtland is 15-0. I have not seen Kirtland play really ever in person. I've seen him on TV. Matt probably knows Kirtland better than me. I think Coldwater's going to beat them. I don't know who Drew has favored. I'm
Coldwater by 5, and it is my upset special. I absolutely like Kirtland. Upset special.
All right.
5-point dogs. Kirtland is you talk about. I mean, it's the next thing to Marion Local.
That's
They're a
right.
machine.
Yeah. Bill and I talked about this earlier the week. I agree 100%. Tiger Laverty, that's the guy. That dude took a mediocre, the Rick Reed, Matt Hall 5-5 West Henry Salem team into the MAC of the Northeast Ohio overnight. He's done a fantastic job. Those guys just don't lose. This Coldwater team, it's tough to get a great read on them because Marion Local beat them so badly. I don't feel like their path has been that strong. I don't feel like Southwest Ohio in general from D5, 6, and 7 has been that strong this year. You never want to bet against a team like Coldwater. Obviously they've got one of the best coaches in the state of Ohio as well. But Kirtland is just a different animal, and they are one of those teams that goes into that game that is absolutely not intimidated like everybody else who lines up against a MAC school.
Absolutely. Like, if you're going to pick against the MAC, it better be Kirtland because Kirtland has beat them. Now, Kirtland has lost to them as well.
Yeah.
I believe that the MAC has beat Kirtland maybe about the same amount of times, but I'm surprised. We played Coldwater last year. Coldwater, I'm basing off last year, really good football team. We lost in a really close game. I just would not have said that they were incredible. Like, if you told me, hey, that team's playing Kirtland, I'd take Kirtland because I look at Kirtland like that's a machine, like you said.
Well, they both have won big. Now, in week 3, Kirtland played Perry, which is east of Cleveland, which won the state title last year in D4-5, and Kirtland beat them in 3 overtimes, 22-21. Pretty much all their other scores are Brahms. The Coldwater's been more impressive this year with scores, Rick, and I was at the game last year, and the Chiefs played there, and you coached that game. Coldwater's been better score-wise this year than last year. The record's better as well. I think Coldwater wins.
Well, hey, that's not a hot take.
But I think they win. I think they win by a touchdown. Something like 28-21. But you guys both think Kirtland wins.
I agree.
I'm with it. Afternoon game.
Hold on here. I got to get back to my...
Well, we're down to Indian Valley and Perkins.
Well, the afternoon game is one you've already talked about.
That's the
Liberty
Ironton.
Center and Ironton. I think Ironton, but I think it's a decent game.
I like Ironton by 10. I think that I'm with Matt that
I think over 10, but still a decent game. Like 28.
I think it's over 10. I think, and I'm guessing on Liberty Center, but I just everything I've heard you say about Ironton and everything I read and everything I saw those same videos in the weight room. They look like a machine. And I'm just guessing Liberty Center's a little more normal. Like, great, like a MAC team. Great football players, discipline, all that stuff, but not dudes that are going to Division I. So I would go Ironton. And then the last game must be Perkins versus Indian Valley.
Yeah.
Perkins 12-point favorites. Indian Valley's that one team. There's a lot of the same names year after year. That's a school that I don't believe has ever played in the state finals, at least in my time going. So I would go Perkins by 12. I've always been a guy that's had a lot of respect for that. What is that conference, Tips? It's like Northern Ohio League or something, NOL. It's like Clyde, Perkins, Oak Harbor. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
It feels like every time we've messed with them in any sport, we haven't come away from it very good. It feels like those schools do really well. So obviously I'm reaching a little bit when I say Perkins.
Hasn't Indian Valley?
They had a guy that was the final 8 though for Mr. Football. This running back, last name I think Kinsey for Indian Valley, which is over by like New Philadelphia. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere still. The guy's rushed for like 2,700 yards.
A lot different schedule. Like
I know.
they played Dover, which is an interesting team. They beat them by 4. Dover's a team that moved into Region 11, and when the Chiefs moved to Region 12, there was a lot of talk of, this is way harder. And I said, I don't know. Region 11 has Steubenville, it has Dover moving in, so I don't know. Some of this is a little bit of bias, just saying Perkins is a little more familiar to me, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the one game I feel the worst about picking.
I agree. That's a tough game.
I guess I'll go with Perkins, but that's kind of a coin toss for me.
All right, well, Matt, so what's next for you? Your son is a sophomore. He's going to be a junior. So obviously this is a big year for him as far as off season. And
It is, yeah. He's focusing on that, and we're looking forward to the future of West Liberty Center in football, and 17 seniors. That's another thing we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
You look at some of the best teams the last 15, 20 years from West Liberty. Where have they been really good? It's when they've had that big senior class. So they're going to lose a lot. They've got a lot coming back. So he's wanting to work. He's the type of kid that wants to play college football, and he's got that big 6'4", 6'5", 200-pound frame right now as a sophomore. Where I told him I'd fluff him a little bit here. He's looking to do something, and he plans on hitting that weight room.
Play other sports?
He did play baseball. He's going to give it up, and he wants to focus on hopefully playing at the next
Great
level.
frame.
Good frame.
you're
yeah.
still going to coach baseball.
I am. Yeah, I've got another. He's got a twin brother who's not quite as bulky, but almost the same height. And
Doesn't play football?
Playing baseball, and so I'll continue to.
So you have 3 boys.
Correct.
And your oldest boy is out.
Graduated last year. Yeah.
And what's he do?
He's an electrician.
Okay. Hey, that's funny. I just had a conversation about Pee Wee wrestling practice, and a guy said, I hope my son becomes an electrician. I said, well, he'll make $80,000 a year within a few years.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
Right away.
Good for him.
So yeah, that's the plan.
Tips? Anything happening about Fountain City Schools that we didn't know about?
Well, you work at the school, so this Tavian signed yesterday, Traylon Newcomb today. Last time the Chiefs had 2 football Division I guys in the same school year was 1969 with Gail Clark and Jesse Williams. So it's kind of a rare air for sure. But otherwise, getting into some of these winter sports, which I know you do a lot of stuff. Garage Sports, by the way, Matt's a sports junkie like me. You do a great job on your previews. You really do. like what he did for the playoffs with Ironton, and I don't know the schools maybe as well as Matt, because he is Mr. West Liberty Salem. But when I read the Ironton preview like 5 or 6 days before the West Slip game, and I was like, oh.
Well, I felt like I took a little heat over that. Somebody said,
No heat, but I'm just
someone said to me, like, oh, you stirred people up. And I said, what do you mean? I said, I
No,
was
you
just trying to
put the facts down.
interest. I wasn't, like, trying to declare anything.
no.
I was just saying, hey, I don't know if you guys know this Ironton team is like, I wasn't saying, like, hey, they're going to beat West Liberty. I was like, they're somebody. Like, there's something to talk about here. And so, yeah, no, I enjoy doing it. I'm rooting. One of the things that it's done for me, and maybe it just frustrates some of my friends, because I'm a pretty pro Chieftain crowd that I run with. They don't like a lot of pro other schools. It does make me root a little bit more for, like, and West Liberty's easier because I'm from there and we don't play West Liberty, but even Ben Logan the Lake, like, I want something to write about.
Well, plus
I guess
we
that's
were
the media
impressed with
thing.
those. We were impressed with the football coaches. We did. I think I did the West Liberty State preview with Andy McGill, and he said, "I like Andy. He was a straight shooter. Said we're meaning West Liberty State. We're going to be good." He was right. And I also got to talk to Bryce Hodge, and you said that Coach Rapp thought his team would be pretty good. So there are a lot of teams that had really good falls. I don't know if we have time for any of the Ohio State talk. I might just ask. I know Brian Harmon was on early. He's pretty outspoken about the Bucks, but Rick's kind of a historian. And I would ask you, and maybe both of you, you've been a coach. How does a coach? And this is going to sound bad, because I do think Ryan Day overall is a really good football coach. But how does a coach mess up a big game? For me, that's kind of what happens. Players too. The field goal kicker, he missed the kicks. The quarterback threw 2 interceptions. But how does it's almost like the coach got sucked into the rabbit hole to me.
I think the first thing I would say is the coach is responsible for the culture. And in my mind, the Ohio State losses the last few years are culture losses. And I feel like Ryan Day has been pulled down a little bit of a rabbit hole that started with Jim Harbaugh calling him out a few years ago. I know that sounds a little like preposterous, but when he said he was born on third base and thought he hit a triple, I do think it deeply affected Ryan Day. I think that Ryan Day took it deeply personal, and I think he decided then that he was going to prove Jim Harbaugh wrong. And the problem with that is, Brian Harmon says the problem was he knows he was right, and that's some insecurity, Psych 101 type stuff. I feel like he almost decided he had to build a tough football team, and I kind of agreed with him a couple years ago. Like, I think I said to you on the podcast, they've got to get tougher. But there is a point where it's like, don't try to be somebody you're not. It doesn't mean you don't want to be tough up front. You don't want to run the ball. But if you have an advantage here, like, don't Mike Mock. He wasn't going to say, hey, we're going to ground and pound. We're going to do what we do. Like, this is what we do. And I do feel like, I think back to how he reacted with the Lou Holtz comment. That was kind of a weird night when he kind of lost his mind after the game when an 80-some-year-old guy, like, where's Lou Holtz? I think that was a little bit of a, like, Ryan Day's freaking out a little bit because somebody said he wasn't very tough. I like Ryan Day. I respect Ryan Day. I'm rooting for him. But it's unacceptable. I mean, you're paid $10 million a year. He's not getting a stipend for $4,000 at Bell Fountain. He's getting $10 million. So your job's to beat Michigan. And it was a bad loss. And you've got to pay the price for that. Now, where I disagree, and I said this a little, Carmen, this idea that Ohio State has nothing to play for is absolutely silly. If you tell me that if they win the national title, it doesn't matter because they lost to Michigan, I think you're an idiot. I don't know how else to say it. They have plenty to play for. Do I believe they're going to do that? I think it's hard. I think that offensive line is a challenge. I think that those injuries really stacked up on them. And I think culturally they haven't done a great job of creating an offensive line. They just don't have the depth. And what they do have, maybe they haven't developed. I don't know. Luke Montgomery's still not playing. He's kind of the guy, the Finley guy that we always say, where's Luke Montgomery? Well, they obviously don't think he's good enough because he's not playing. So I hope that it works out. I'm personally biased because Tavian St. Clair I care about, and he's going there, and I want him to go to a program with the people he trusts, and I want him to go to a program that's secure and that's built to last. And the great thing is he's going to Ohio State, so Ohio State's not going anywhere. If Ryan Day, they decide he's done, Ohio State will wake up tomorrow and they'll get a really good football coach. Now, will they beat Michigan? I don't know. Learn that on the field.
Yeah. By the way, I'll say this, and then let's Rick show. Who would you pick? I just thought of this right now. I don't even know my answer. I'll have to come up with something in 30 seconds. Who do you think is going to win the whole thing? College football playoff.
Who's going to win the college football playoff?
I think it's pretty open. I don't see.
As a college football fan, and keep in mind I'm an Illinois fan, and I've got a stat for you guys here to talk the Ryan Day thing. But I think Ohio State set up fantastic. I mean, what did that loss create? It created an extra bye week, an extra week of preparation, an extra week of healing. We know they've got the talent to compete with anybody in the country. Aside from the Michigan loss, one loss was to Oregon, a game which they very easily could have won, but it was poor clock management by the quarterback. And Oregon looks like they're the best team in the country. So I think they've got a shot. I'll cheer for them, even as an Illinois fan. And, just kind of to circle back around to the Ryan Day thing, I think it's important. I think Ryan Day's going to have to coach his tail off here. He's probably feeling the heat too. But the stat I wanted to give you guys real quick about Ryan Day, and one thing that annoys me about Ohio State is, why are we talking about this? What coach is going to go in and perform better than what Ryan Day has done at Ohio State? So 3 college football playoffs, 2 Big Ten championships, a college football playoff championship game appearance in 2020. He's 46-0 against unranked teams and 19-9 against top 25 teams. You can count on one hand the amount of coaches who've had that kind of success. And I understand it's frustrating. We've lost 4 straight years to our rivalry. But listen, the guy, and I've watched some of those games and scratched my head too. You get that, people did that with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. People did that with Nick Saban in Alabama at times. It happens. I don't think the resolution is getting rid of a coach who has shown that he can be successful, he can recruit, he can build a team that every year is capable of winning a national championship.
I'm not saying that I want Ryan Day fired, because I don't want him fired. I understand if he is fired. Where I would push back on you is, I do believe Ohio State's program is uniquely positioned where a competent coach would have similar results. And I know that you may say that's crazy, and I might be wrong, because other programs have fallen. We've watched it, like Michigan's an example. Michigan fell. They went from being elite to being really bad for a little bit. Alabama fell before Nick Saban. We have been very fortunate at Ohio State to really last for now, like 60 years since Woody got going, where we've not really dipped much. We've dipped a little bit here and there like anybody. So I guess the counter argument is that the program is set up with a competent leader to do similar to what you're saying. And that guy is paid $10 million a year to beat Michigan. Not every year, but beat Michigan more than 4 years, especially when you're better. So I don't know if I would totally agree, but I do see the point that you can screw this thing up by firing Ryan Day and then hiring Ryan Day, Ohio State's version of Brady Hoke, which is what Michigan did. And so it can go south. I'm not naive enough to say, hey, I'm an Ohio State grad and we'll always be great no matter what dumb stuff we do. But I also won't go so far the other way to say Ryan Day, if he doesn't win national titles, he doesn't beat Michigan, can have a lifetime contract. There is an expiration on that. And maybe it's not yet, but if we're sitting here in 3 years and we're like, we've lost to Michigan 6 straight years, and we've made the playoffs but we haven't won, you're going to say, okay, can we just get somebody that can? I don't know. That's my opinion.
As an Illinois fan, I'd take that.
Well, but the programs are different, and historically they're different.
I get it.
Pick? You got a pick? I'll just throw Texas out there.
Yeah, it's sure. I think it is. I don't think Ohio State's a serious contender, and I'm excited about the playoffs. I am. I'm anti this idea that Ohio State is somehow out of this thing. I hate that. And the national media's jumped on us pretty good, and I want to say to them, hey, I said this maybe at the beginning is. I hope you hold Michigan to the same standard. And if you don't, then just agree that we're way better than Michigan. And that's cool if you want to admit that. You agree. And I'm not trying to smack at Illinois, but they're not the same. Apparently Michigan people feel the same way about Michigan because they want to act like Ryan Day deserves fired. Well, you didn't think that about Jim Harbaugh when he lost 5 straight. Now, if he had lost 6 straight in COVID, I think he would have been fired. Texas, Georgia. I mean, I'm always going to defer to the SEC. I know Texas is not. I think Oregon's got a chance, though. They're pretty good.
Due for a loss somewhere, though, I think.
Yeah, I don't like. I think now, and I said this when Ohio State lost to Oregon. I do think Ohio State has serious O-line problems. I don't feel as good about them winning the national title because of those O-line problems. I wouldn't want a loss. I think like basketball, you want to be undefeated in basketball. You want to get 30-0. Like what's the point? You're just so that you have that on your back. Like, hey, we can't lose a game. Like I think in today's climate, you almost want to have a loss. And there's a weird thing going on with this 5 seed, which Ohio State's not getting now. The 5 seed is where you want to be, and that's kind of weird that you host a game and then you play the 4 seed. I mean, that's a huge advantage. As the 8 seed, 9 seed, you're going to play the 1 right away. You don't want to be there.
Yeah, Bucks would like to get up to 7. I don't know if they can.
Which could happen. Penn State could drop below us, right?
Rick,
All right.
show.
Hey, I appreciate you guys coming out. Matt, you especially. I appreciate your tips. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate Craft Emporium. I think everybody's having a good time. We'll be back every Thursday. I don't know who we're going to have on. We'll start talking winter sports next Thursday. We appreciate Top of Ohio Radon, Paul Newland. Give him a call. You got to get them radon levels checked and visit the Craft Emporium. For Rick Reed, Matt Hall, Bill Tipple, and Craft Emporium, Top of Ohio Radon. So long.